I personally don't believe that ACOG should be on defense in Rainbow Six Siege. This is a mindset I've had for a while now, and in this video, I'm going to explain my reasons for this. It's not because I think they're OP, because I don't think they're OP, I have many different reasons. And in this video, I'm going to get into those reasons, and if you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. But I just ask that you watch this video to the end, so you can hear the point I am putting across, and then we can continue the conversation from there. Now, why do I believe that the defending side of Rainbow Six Siege should not have an ACOG? Now, again, it's not because I necessarily find them OP, and it's also not because I dislike fun, which I know many people will put a point across, which is fair enough. I can't tell you what you find fun or not. That isn't something I can debate you on. That's your personal preference. If you like ACOG on defense because you find it fun, that's fair enough for you. So the reason why I don't like ACOG on defense is that I believe when operators have an ACOG on defense and are given an ACOG on defense, it undermines who that operator is and holds them back from their true potential as that operator. And I know people are going to say, why is it okay if attack has it and defense doesn't and all that stuff? We'll get into that in this video. Now, I'm going to take the most recent data graph as an example here because it shows a similar trend on both console and PC. The most played defender across both platforms right now is Doc, an operator who is one of the two healers on defense. I guess you could also include Rook in that category as well, since he does grant you the ability to revive yourself, but according to these graphs, Doc is currently the most picked defender across all platforms. Now, listen to what I'm saying. I am not saying that Doc is overpowered. Not saying that in the slightest. What I am saying is, in his current position, Doc is being played for being a fragger rather than being a healer. The healing is the benefit to support this fragging playstyle, and this is going to come down to simply how you think Siege should be balanced. You may be on the left here. You may think he should be a fragger first and a healer second, but me personally, I believe that not just Doc, but every operator should be their role first and a fragger second. I think that's what makes these operators interesting, and I think right now Doc currently isn't a healer first. And I always believe in Rainbow Six Siege that there should be a good balance of both. You have to have a good weapon which also complements your gadget and vice versa. I'm not trying to get rid of gunplay in Siege, it's an FPS at the end of the day. But I also think we should keep these operators as unique operators rather than diminishing them to the gun guy. And you may be wondering, hasn't Doc always had the ACOG? Why is he now just becoming the most played? Why is that? Because there were other operators with a 1.5/ACOG who were currently taking the limelight. You had the era of Oryx, Alibi, Warden, Wamai, Thorn. All these operators would go on to be one of the most highly picked defenders simply because they were that rotation's fragger. In each of these scenarios, these operators' uniqueness and abilities have been completely undermined by the fact they have an ACOG. Look at Thorn, for example. She went from hardly being played to then being played once she had the ACOG, and then hardly being played again. This is on top of having statistically the worst performing trap on defense. Due to the removal of the scope, she went from the second most played defender in the game to going right back down to where she was, somewhat actually worse than she was before. So, at the end of the day, was Thorn as an operator ever improved? No, she had the scope and she just became that rotation's ACOG guy on defense. I think that's terrible balancing, because Thorn still was not improved and she was simply being used for her gun. This treatment could have been given to any single operator and it would have given them the same outcome. These operators aren't treated like unique operators, they're treated like someone with a gun, and this change could have happened to any single one of them. In terms of Rainbow Six Siege, that is poor balancing. Now, going back to Doc, let's take a look at his pick rate, for example. Before he had his 100 HP full heal buff, he went from underplayed. They buffed him, and he honestly actually almost went to the perfect middle of the chart. But because you had these other full guy operators, like Alibi, for example, who had the ACOG at the time, this still kept Doc in a good position, because people who were playing for the ACOG 1.5 playstyle and crutch went to Alibi, and the people who wanted to play that healing role went to Doc. But then after Alibi, it went to Warden and Wamai and all these other operators that got passed around. And when you look at the graphs, you can see the successor catching up to the one in charge. You can see Doc coming for Wamai, until now we're at the stage where it's Doc, who isn't being treated as a healer. And that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily overpowered, but it's undermining to who he is as an operator. If we remove the ACOG from Doc, we can start to improve his role as a healer. Make him a 3-speed, for example. Give him extra speed to roam around the map and assist people healing them. If you want to still frag, you can. You have a gun in your hand. You can't take that away. I don't want to take that away. That's the game. But that isn't your primary role. Your primary role is still the healer. And right now, Doc is being treated as the fragger, with the healing being used to play into that aggressive playstyle. You've also got operators like Rook, who right now isn't highly overpicked. Well, do you want to know the reason why that is? That's because he isn't this rotations ACOG guy. That's Doc. You take Doc's ACOG away, and another one of these are just going to become this rotations ACOG guy. Their gadget will be completely undermined, and they'll once again be focusing on fragging. Just like the exact reason why Doc has been underpicked despite having an ACOG is because there has always been a full guy in front of him to take that weight of pick rate and to then take that nerf. It's happened time and time again, and right now is just Doc's turn, and a lot of people are more frustrated by it because he does have an ability which does play into that aggressive playstyle. And although I did personally say I don't think Defender ACOGs are overpowered, you can look at it and see that Rook and Frost and Aruni, 3 ACOG wielding defenders, have some of the highest win rates. But why is their win rates higher than Doc? Because they are most likely playing those operators, yes, alongside an ACOG, but more for their gadget, because the brain dead swing everything ACOG operator right now is Doc, hence the lower win rate but the higher pick rate. But if Doc wasn't the most picked right now, I guarantee you Rook or Frost would then be in that position, and they would be used less for their gadget and more for their gun, just like Doc. So you may be wondering, why do I want the ACOGs away? Well, that's so we can then focus on balancing these operators in their true respective roles. If Doc's a healer, we can start buffing him and improving his healing capabilities even more, like what I'm saying with a 3-speed, for example. And I also think Rook falls into this same issue as well. I think Rook is a painfully bland operator. Mainly all he does is drop down his armor plates, and then he just goes off the spawn peak and plays a fragging role. Why don't we actually start improving Rook and treat him more as this backbone support operator? Give him a deployable shield, maybe even give him a new primary weapon. These operators are not being seen in their true potential and are not being tweaked and improved to their true potential, because as it currently stands, the ACOG will always undermine their role and gadget. That part isn't an opinion, that is simply fact, and we have seen it time and time again through multiple operators. I'm not saying these operators should be nerfed, I'm saying these operators should actually be improved in a substantial way and not just with a scope. And I know I'll probably get a lot of hate from this video because it's not a popular take, but me personally, in Rainbow Six Siege, I'd rather see my unique operators expanded upon and focused on in their roles rather than just being that week's ACOG guy. And I will always stand by that because that is what makes these unique operators and not generic gun-wielding video game soldiers. And I'm also going to focus on some points here because I know people are going to comment this, specifically about why is it okay for all of attack to have ACOGs, and surely we should just give every defender an ACOG to balance it out. And let's start with the whole thing about attack having ACOG. As of Operation Deadly Omen, every single attacker has an ACOG on their weapon without question. Why is that? Because for the past decade, it has shown to us that attacker pick rates are not as heavily swayed by ACOG picks as defense are. A lot of attack is still based on gadget play, and I'm not saying that pick rates on defense aren't also like that, but the unification of every attacker having an ACOG allowed Ubisoft to do proper substantial buffs to operators' roles and gadgets, rather than just taking away an ACOG and giving it to the other weapon in the loadout, for example. Check the most recent R4C buff where it lost a few bullets. I thought this was a pointless nerf, but at least they are looking at ways of putting the R4C and the G36C on the same level field, rather than just removing one of their ACOGs like they'd done before. Giving every attacker an ACOG allowed them to focus on operators' gadgets and not always debating about whether a gun needs an ACOG or not. That has allowed gadgets and other aspects of the operator's balancing to be the determining factor of what makes them good, rather than just a scope. And before people say, what about Ashe? She is an entry fragger. Although she does have a support gadget, her being highly picked for this role isn't a bad thing, because attack needs entry fraggers, and we should actually focus on improving some other operators to be entry fraggers as well. You need that fine line focus, however, though, of gun and gadget. Just because Ashe is played a lot, it doesn't mean she's overpowered necessarily. Just like how I'm not saying that Doc is overpowered as well. But Ashe is the entry fragger. Doc is not. That's why they should not be playing the similar role on both sides. Now, I know I just said giving ACOG to every single attacker allowed gadgets to be more prominent in balancing and determining pick rate. So, theoretically, yes, if you gave every single defender an ACOG, pick rates would completely change because gadgets would then become the main determining factor because you don't have to worry if that one you're playing has an ACOG or not. They all have it. But you need to understand something here because I know people are going to comment this. Every attacker having an ACOG is not the same as every defender having an ACOG. Defenders have the advantage in Rainbow Six Siege. For starters, the clock is on their side. If no one moves in the match, defense will win by default. It is attackers' responsibility to enter the defender's area and start breaking down their defenses. They have to play into these defensive angles. Just because both sides here have the ACOG, it wouldn't make it even. If you take 5 defenders with an ACOG, plant them in a bomb site, and tell them to hold these angles in which attackers have to work towards and open and present themselves in to get control, defenders will win these gunfights a majority of the time. Even look at it right now when a lot of defenders don't have an ACOG. Ask anyone who plays Rainbow Six Siege and I'll guarantee you when they load into a match, they are much more happy when they see the fact that they are on defense first than they are on attack. Why is that? Because the attackers have to play into your playstyle. They have to play into your setup, your gadgets, your traps. So I definitely think attackers having ACOG and no defenders having ACOG is perfectly fine and balanced. Because, once again, an ACOG doesn't determine who wins a gunfight. If defenders are playing correctly, playing off their utility, and having the attackers have to push into their angles, defenders will still win even with a one-time scope. This is your map, these are your sight controls, and this is your advantage. An ACOG doesn't make a defending operator good, an ACOG turns them into a generic gun soldier, with their gadget being a secondary item. And I would like to see a point where operators with the ACOG, such as Doc, are actually focused on and improved as a healer in his case, rather than being this week's next hot thing with an ACOG. And then we can finally get to a stage of Rainbow Six Siege where ACOG is not a debate, it isn't who's going to lose it or gain it this patch note, and we can finally just focus on simply improving operators in their roles and making them more desirable and improving them. I don't think wanting these operators to be seen in their greatest potential is a bad thing, because if an ACOG is going to hold them back and stop them from being their true potential in their role, then I don't think it should be there. So thank you for watching this video to the end so you could hear all the points I wanted to get across, because this is something I truly do believe, and I don't think it's as simple as when some people are like, oh, that ACOG killed me, it's overpowered. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it undermines and diminishes operators, and we should move on from that in year 10. But yeah, be sure to let me know your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. Either is perfectly fine. I'm happy for a debate, and I'd appreciate if you did enjoy the video and the work I put into it, you hit the like button. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll catch you all later. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.